So we talked about Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yes.
And now we're into Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers.
Two Towers. The year, they were rolling them out one after another. Early 2000s. This is like older than like over 20 years old, Tom.
Yeah, and it looks it.
I was reading, like I said, the books. I'd read The Hobbit in elementary school, but I had read these basically like right before each movie came out for the first time.
Well, I was talking about how I just discovered that there was a Parker Brothers Lord of the Rings Atari game that was like created in 1983, was advertised in 1983, but then like never released because the collapse of like the Atari ecosystem or whatever collapsed back then. But seeing that, like when I first heard about that, I thought, oh, this is like an April Fool's joke. This is a scam, because it's like there's no way there was a Lord of the Rings, you know. But again, it's like because that's just too good to be true. That can't possibly be real. But it's like, yeah, like Lord of the Rings is this thing. It was like written in the 40s, and then has this big like resurgence in like the 60s and the 70s, and so and then yeah, again like in the 2000s, these movies come out. So it. You know, like as a kid, I knew about this stuff and like the animated versions and stuff, but it feels so much a part of like part and parcel of the early 2000s that it's like very easy to forget, you know, that this is like,
this was like the biggest thing going, and it made $1 billion in like 2002 money.
Yeah,
like it was. Well, that's funny you mentioned the resurgence in the 70s. That's when my buddy, I think his dad said he got into the Lord of the Rings in the 70s.
Yeah.
And I know that his dad had the books at his house.
Probably in the 80s, like Dungeons and Dragons probably really helped too. Because for me, it was like, I was learning about Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons and all that stuff all at the same time. So they might as well have come out the same year, even though there's like decades between them. But it's like, this is like, as somebody who was into Dungeons and Dragons and all those, that genre, sword and sorcery, video games and stuff, this is like the best that genre's ever been in film.
Oh my God, like it hits the fucking sweet spot. We talked about like your party is like moving around and like wizards, warriors.
You got your wizard and he's doing stuff. And I remember talking to a guy who was like very well versed in D&D, but not as well versed in Lord of the Rings. And then when the movie was coming out, and he was saying, I'm pretty disappointed in Gandalf as a wizard, because I thought he'd be like shooting fireballs left and right out of his hand, and it's like he just kind of walks around with his stick and like occasionally does something like, and it's like, yeah, okay, like I get that, like, you know, that wouldn't have jumped out to me, but I get that. That's
this was always a great scene when he's like falling on fire,
fighting the Balrog.
I'm a Gimli head.
Well, like looking at that Lord of the Rings Atari game, it was like I was shocked by the ambition of it, that it's like, because it's like the natural thing to make an Atari game of would be the Moria sequence. Like that would be there's a ton of games from that era that are basically that. You take the Mines of Moria sequence and make a game, but that they were making like an overworld game where you're like green grass and you're going to like towns and you're going to forests and you're getting chased by the ring wraiths and stuff. Like that's pretty ambitious for the Atari 2600.
Definitely, and that's so funny that it was the Lost game. You told me about the other Lost Return of the Jedi game.
Yeah, Return of the Jedi, like Ewoks game for the Atari, and like all these like unreleased Atari games. It was like the people who like learned how to program the Atari. Like the Atari is like this, like it's this insanely limited piece of hardware. Like it was, you know, invented to play like games that were on the level of Pong. But somehow they figured out all these hacks and ways to exploit design flaws and things to get it to do all kinds of things it was just not designed to do. And it had a pretty long life in terms of like consoles. And so the people who were programming it were getting it to do magical things, and they just got better and better and better and better. And so they were, they were like really, you know, the last games that came out for the Atari, it's like astonishing what they were able to do.
Was the last Starfighter game ever produced, or was it just like
I've seen like I've seen versions of the last Starfighter game that were for the Atari computers.
Okay.
Which would have also run, some version of it on the Atari 5200. But I've never seen like the 2600 version of it. I'm sure it exists and it's out there. But
leading up to this, everyone's like, it's like the Battle of Helm's Deep was the big centerpiece of this one.
And as a fan of the books, this one I was like, Helm's Deep wasn't like this. It wasn't. And where's all the cool stuff? Where's like all the stuff that I loved in the book just wasn't here, or it was like very like scaled back and stuff, or saved for the third movie. And so it's like all that's left is Helm's Deep, and like they make Helm's Deep into like such a big production here, but it wasn't like that in the books. And so, but then it's like, oh yeah, they're making movies here. They're not, they're not making so it's like, okay, we're gonna make
zero in on this.
Yeah, we're gonna make Helm's Deep as if it's like the last days of Pompeii, or it's like the fall of Atlantis, or like we're gonna really, because that's what that makes sense as a movie,
And then
and they incorporate like boogie boarding or whatever,
wasn't Legolas like
Legolas invents a skateboard.
Yeah. Marty McFly shows up
in the like Lord of the Rings Atari game. Frodo has like the little cap, like it really is like a proto Link, like
that's sick.
And it is like
it looks these.
It is interesting that like
here.
Link, like Legend of Zelda, is kind of like the best like Lord of the Rings video game, because it is like he is kind of I think he's supposed to be an elf or something in the lore, but he is kind of like
he
like
would
a,
be
like
in
a
their
hobbit.
party.
Yeah, he's kind of like a hobbit going on an adventure. This like little guy with a sword fighting much larger foes.
Creatures. Sean Astin from the Goonies. There was a time when Elijah Wood and Sean Astin were leading like the biggest movie in the world.
Right. Yeah, they were Tom Cruise and
and Val Kilmer from Top Gun.
Exactly.
I always thought like Sean Astin should have got like a recognized
in like the books. It's like he is like the character, like he's the main character. Like Frodo is sort of touted as the main character, but it really is Sam. And there's like some moments in these movies where you get that sense, but like the Lord of the Rings, like within the book itself, is supposedly written by Sam. Like that he was like the guy in charge of taking all this stuff. Like he had the last word. Like Bilbo wrote his book, Frodo wrote his book, and then Sam wrote the rest, and kind of like
that's awesome,
weaves it all together.
And then New Zealand, we said the like Middle Earth is like
Gollum, Andy Serkis as Gollum, and then this like this motion capture technology is like the killer app for this movie. And they sort of save him. Gollum, you get like a brief glimpse of him in the first one, but then in this, it's like we're gonna like he's Yoda in the like we're gonna like show him off, like he's gonna blow everybody's mind in this one.
I think Andy Serkis was like a second unit director on this a lot.
Okay,
so he was like Peter Jackson's like right hand man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Andy Serkis, definitely an MVP, and but I don't think he doesn't get his share of the accolades. I feel like he is a very like celebrated figure, like across.
He's always referenced like when they're like it's like an Andy Serkis like performance. What was the thing we were?
And he had the market cornered.
He definitely did on motion capture.
Oh no, he was playing
what was
Dr. Manhattan's dick in Watchmen. He was swinging back and forth on a rope to like simulate the zigzag of.
They're like Dr. Manhattan is hanging brain.
I gotta rewatch Watchmen and then rewatch the HBO Watchmen.
Yeah, I was gonna rewatch that too. Like, he's begging for mercy.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like this, and then Spider-Man kind of came out around the same time, and both had the device of like the bad guy kind of talking to his reflection and having these like even the editing is the same too. It's just interesting. I don't know if one was copying the other or parallel thought, but
I always forget that they're like around the same time too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe's like, my precious.
Yeah, this is like when I first started like creating comics. It was kind of it was before the Marvel movies. It was before this, and I kind of thought like, oh, it'd be really cool to like, do the Lord of the Rings in a comic, or like capture like the essence of Lord of the Rings, and or like capture the essence of like an old and then it was just so weird that like a couple years later it's like, oh yeah, you get your ticket and you can watch the Lord of the Rings, and
on the big screen,
all this stuff that was like, oh yeah, this is my thing, this is like my little secret, like me and a small number of people know about this stuff, and then for it to be like everybody's watching.
Oh yeah, it'd be like, hey, would you see what Samwise Gamgee's doing?
Yeah. I always think of like Entertainment Tonight or something, where Entertainment Tonight is like, tonight we we interview Aragorn and ask him what's going on in Rivendell.
It shows Legolas, like he's got like Starbucks, he's in the bag, or he has all the bags.
Like. John Tesh is like, we're here at the Prancing Pony, and the one that jumps out to me was like from the like the Marvel movie, like the Avengers and stuff, and like it was like Mary Hart or somebody, like, we're talking to Pepper Potts herself, and I'm like, Pepper, like that is a deep cut comic book character, and like they're talking about it on Entertainment Tonight, like it's but it's like
nothing.
Yeah, it is like
John Tesh, like, I'm here with Howard the Duck.
Like, just it was so weird to have basically like my dreams come true for like all the stuff like I was into, to like become the celebrated the star of the football team is
a Clone Wars expert. I'm like, I don't know this shit anymore.
He's getting like the Frodo haircut, and he's got like a Frodo Lives t-shirt.
I'm like, hey, you just threw me down the stairs 2 fucking weeks ago or whatever.
Man, Gollum, what a performance.
Yeah, Andy Serkis, he's like
a lot of Gollum in this movie.
There really is a lot of Gollum. He's like swinging back and forth. He's Dr. Manhattan's Dawn. He's like, how are you getting into character? He's method.
Like Fellowship of the Ring, it is like you got the whole team together and it's so much fun. And then like, everybody splits up.
I know,
it's kind of like you wish, it's the same thing with like Star Wars and stuff. And that's why like George Lucas wanted there to be a moment in Return of the Jedi where even if briefly, everybody comes together for a little bit, because
very practical effects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, practical effects, and then you have like some of the creatures, like the trolls or the Uruk-hai or whatever, where they have like the mask that's got animatronics inside of it, remote controlled animatronics and stuff.
So awesome.
And Saruman gets some moments and stuff. It's just there's like all this cool stuff that happens in the book, but again, you get the extended versions. Then they would keep, like, every so often they'd come out with like a more and more extended version. So it's like you got to watch the 12-hour version or whatever to get like all the stuff that's in the book.
I haven't watched these. Oh no, I haven't watched these since quarantine. Okay. I watched the extended editions.
Me and my wife, every year, like around Christmas, we like just like every night we like watch a little bit of, and like just watch through the whole thing, and then when we finish it, it's like we want more, so then we'll start up The Hobbit.
I haven't watched the new Hobbit movies yet.
You haven't? Okay. Yeah, like, and again, The Hobbit, it's another one of those things where it's like, oh man, they like really like fucked over the book. But again, it's like they don't give two shits about a book. They want to make like, okay, we're making a trilogy and this is how we're going to do. Gollum's like the centerpiece here, and then the dragon is like the centerpiece of it's definitely like that. I mean, I don't like the Hobbit ones nearly as much, but they do have some pretty great moments. But it is like you're gorging on this, like
I mean, that is pretty. It's like like a shorter book,
a much shorter book, and they make a meal out of it. They make a trilogy, but again, they just add a bunch of stuff. It's
like I have some Hobbit Legos too.
Mm-hmm.
The Lego game during this era was fucking great.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, again, like maybe if they come, I think I've heard about like a remake or something that they're planning for this.
I didn't know about
so
that.
like I'd like another shot at some of those. Oh, they have a Lego Rivendell right now.
Oh my
So
gosh,
yeah, you can't when they're looking for the Hobbits, that's a lot of running.
It is
like
so
I get
much.
exhausted thinking about all that running.
You know what I was thinking about watching these running scenes? I'm thankful for its pre-drone era. So
Okay,
you get
yeah.
that jostling helicopter shots where it would just be these smooth, weird, like
Yeah.
Like
they have like GoPro. It's like Shin Godzilla or something.
yeah. So like you still have like, look out, here comes the fucking Bell Jet
Yeah.
Ranger like over the battlefield, like yeah.
And Gimli, he's like huffing and puffing, and it's like, "Come on, Gimli, what's your problem?" And it's like, we could only wish to have like Gimli's, stamina for this. Yeah.
Come on, Gimli, what's your problem? We've only been running at a full sprint
for days.
For days. And you're holding like 100-pound axe.
You're on the Aragorn diet where you like eat a scone and then like jog, miles all day long.
You have moldy bread wrapped in like burlap, and then you like take a bite of your crusted bread.
Yeah, like Saruman, kind of like decimating the forest around him. Anytime we like drive past like somebody buys like a house or whatever, and they like cut down all the trees or whatever. We're always like, okay, Saruman's
there. Christopher Lee too. Who would have thought he'd be on top of the world? He was in Star Wars and Lord of the Rings.
It's some pretty cool, comebacks for people. Like, so yeah, Christopher. I mean, not necessarily a comeback. I mean, he was an actor. He was a working actor. But yeah, to be like the heavy in like these huge franchises, and then even Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn, he was kind of, and again, he was having a moment around this time too, but it's like, yeah, he's like sort of a character actor. He'd like pop up here and there, but like to be, the superhero in one of these things.
You're like the lead hero.
He was Lali in Carlito's Way.
Yes.
He was like the guy in Carlito's Way who's wearing the wire. And
I remember him from Daylight with Stallone. Stallone's character's name's Kit Latura.
And he gets to be like the hero at like a pretty advanced age for like Hollywood Hollywood superhero standards. I mean, that's Tom Cruise is kind of pushing the limits of that, but it is like he's not a spring chicken
in this. Brad Dourif, Chucky himself is like, I think, Worm Tongue in this, and he's like
playing a similar role to what he played in Dune.
Yes.
Like, think about, man, to like own like all this cool genre, like and literature, like he's a character in Dune, he's a character in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. He spits in Viggo Mortensen's hand. He's like, enough blood has been shed. He's like when Saruman's like inside Theoden King, the king.
Theoden King, yeah.
When he's in his head, he looks like shit, but nobody's like, they're like, he's fine. He's like fucking like, he looks so bad. Everyone's like, they're like, is he okay?
I remember, because this is coming out around the same time as the Star Wars prequels. And I remember like you couldn't help but like draw the comparisons. I remember thinking like during these like, Riders of Rohan scenes and stuff of like, like these actors, they're in like an actual like village that somebody built. And there's just so much more credibility. Like, it affects the performance. Like, they're just able to be more in that reality because they're actually, like, in front of these, like, houses and stuff. And like, you're just asking so much of your actors to, like, stick them in this, like, warehouse with green screen in every direction. And then, like, asking them to, pretend they're talking to Yoda or something,
Yeah, like, I'm always for, even if it looks kind of fake, as long as it's a real thing in the shot. Mm-hmm. They're like, all right, next you're going to have a scene with Jar Jar. Mm-hmm. Get in your headspace.
It's so hard to keep all these, like...
properties.
all these people straight, because it's like, Carl Urban shows up, and I'm like, oh, didn't he die in the last one? But that was a different character.
Yeah, Sean Bean.
Yeah.
And we got a great meme, the one does not simply... when he's like, or one must less simply. It's one of it's like a classic meme. He's like, "Damn it, Jim, I'm a writer of Rohan, not a." He's like, "Whoops, sorry, wrong movie."
Yeah, it's kind of again like Carl Urban too, like Bones McCoy, Judge Dredd, and then
it's everyone's like juggling their properties. Like Gimli's like Sala, and he's like
and then Game of Thrones, and it's like I forgot about Bones because it's a totally different. Like it's like oh yeah, when you see him in Game of Thrones or whatever, but Bones McCoy, it is like he's
Judge Dredd too.
Mm-hmm. There's that Judge Dredd helmet again. Like it's got middle movie-itis, and
of
like
course.
A lot of the critiques of it were like, oh yeah, they're just killing time, and this is, but it's like the middle book was like my favorite of the books, like the middle Lord of the Rings book, and it was so frustrating to me that like the middle movie was like the weak link because they took all the best stuff and like shoved it into the third movie. Like it didn't need to be middle movie-itis.
No.
Like it could have been like a very full movie, but again, like they do what they got to do.
It did get Best Picture.
They took all the cool stuff from the second book and moved it into the third one, and then they took out this like really cool like epilogue from the third movie. Like there just wasn't time. I mean, the third movie is so jam packed because it's got to carry all this weight. It's got to carry half the weight of the second one. But they leave out the scenes where the hobbits come back to the Shire, and the Shire's been completely taken over by Saruman and stuff, and they have to have like they cut all that. So it's like if you would have left the middle one like put more of that cool stuff from the second book in the second movie, then you'd free up a little bit of space in the third one where you could put in that really cool epilogue, because that was a big letdown to me. But from what I understand, Peter Jackson said like they never had any intention of putting that epilogue, the Scouring of the Shire, it's called.
The extended cut of the fifth or the third movie, I think it's like over 5 hours.
Yeah, right.
It's almost 6 hours.
So they would have had to add like maybe another half hour to fit in that epilogue. But again, it didn't need to be so jam packed. You just stick some of the, put some of the good stuff back into the second movie instead of, you're basically starving the second movie. You're taking out everything, and then all that's left is Helm's Deep. So they got to play it up to the hilt. So that's like, the second one's the worst one of the movie series, and then the best one of the book series. So, like,
we should do a prank where we go out in the wilderness. People are like, I don't know if they're like in like animal blinds or something, or like somebody that's like up in a fire tower. Their job is to watch the wilderness. They're like looking around. There's 3 people dressed like Gimli, Legolas, and everyone just running. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh my god.
And then they have that like one orc guy who it's like the same actor playing like 9 different orcs, and then he shows up again in The Hobbit, as a bunch of other orcs or whatever.
He's like Lord Vader.
The orc accent. It's kind of like, okay, we got like a Welsh accent for the hobbits. And then we got like this, this is the way to, around like an East End of London accent, I guess, a Cockney for like these like monsters are like, oi, get over here. Meat's on the menu. Go up the apples and pears. Yeah, so we covered Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee. And coming soon from Image, Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, starring Adam Starr and the Solar Legion. All 3 of those books are available for pre-order by following the pre-order links in the show notes below.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli, on Instagram at Tom_Scioli. Please support my Patreon. Go to patreon.com and search Tom Scioli.
Follow the show on Instagram at total_recall_show.
And yeah, we'll see you next time. Where are we going to see you at?
We'll see you running through running through a field.
Yeah,
with carrying an axe.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff, all that gear they're carrying as they're running.